transformed man thinks, when we yield to the Spirit, when we follow the leading of the Word of God, this is what it's going to look like. And Justin, it just doesn't make sense to me because I would always put different things there. I mean, if you're giving me and I'm going to put, this is the most important thing for the transformed man. This is what it would look, Brother Maddox, this is what it would look like. This is what a Christian should look like. Well, these things would probably be on my list, but I have a list of 50 things, not 4 things. And I don't know that these 4, because that's all he does, he gives us 4 contrasts. I don't know that these 4 contrasts would be even in my top 10. And so the more you go over it, this is the way I think. Why are these 4 the 4? Why are these the one, of all the things that could be listed here, why are these the ones? And you know, I really am not claiming to be very smart, but there's one thing that just keeps showing up out of these 4. The basis of these 4 is self. The basis of these 4 is me and my satisfaction and my determination, and it is all about me. And that's where it all started in verse 17. So we're going to read a few passages that we've gone over 3 times now, but we'll move through them quickly. I do, and here's why. I think it's very, very, not important, I think it's crucial that we keep these verses at the end of chapter 4 in context. They are often, I mean, these are very popular verses. They're often preached from, but I think they're very dangerous verses to preach from if you don't keep them in context. And the context here is a great contrast. In fact, the context here really begins all the way back in chapter 2, because he introduces this thought in chapter 2. Then he builds on it a little bit in chapter 3. And then he gives us some more in chapter 4 in the beginning. And then he rolls it out with pictures because, Matt, he knows we're not very smart. And we need all 3 of those, and then we need the pictures. And still, if we don't pay attention, it's going to go boom right over. And so I want to make sure that we try to keep this in context. The context really begins in verse 17 of chapter 4. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk. And here's where the whole thing begins. Donnie, here's the picture. How do they walk? They walk in the vanity of their mind. And their mind is the key there. They're walking in accordance to where they determine. They determine what's right. They determine what they need. They determine what they deserve. They determine what they want. Man, self, the flesh, put whatever adjective you want in there, Brother Bill. What it is I'm determining. It's my life. I get to determine what's right, what's wrong, what I'm going to do. And there's some truth to that. God gives us the opportunity to choose. But he does not give us the opportunity to define our own truth. This whole idea that this is my truth. No, there's one truth. And we can choose to follow it, or we can choose to live, verse 18, having our understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart. We can choose to live where I determine. I can choose to live in my truth, my ways, my wants. Rob, I can live in that. But the result of living in that is that I will have my understanding darkened. In fact, I'm going to be called ignorant. Proverbs says, fools, says we live in folly. And I'm going to live this life that is vain, that is empty, that never comes to fruition, where I'm always wanting, always seeking more. I mean, there's no way around it. I'm always chasing and never arriving because I'm the determining factor. In fact, Brother Bill, it says we'll be alienated from the life of God. Is that not the scariest little phrase? Here, let me make it more realistic. We'll start this. Brother Jeremy, you can alienate your life from the life of God. That's scary to me. Brother Bill, you can alienate yourself from the life of God. Well, I was alienated from the life of God, but then Ephesians 2:8-9, and I was saved, and now I'm his workmanship, unto good works. Yeah, see, now I'm different. He's writing this to those people. He's writing this to the church. He's warning the church. Do not lose your salvation. This is wandering through life.
Right.
Outside of the umbrella and the guidance and the protection and the power. Verse 19, who being past feeling, just don't care. Look at this. Have given themselves over. Man, anytime you get that phrase, given over, I just think of Romans 1. Given over to a reprobate mind. What kind of mind is that? Well, it's the mind that walks in the vanity of my own thoughts, my own determination, my truth. Who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness, to work all uncleanliness with greediness, because left to ourselves, my own truth, seeking self. Justin, what's the great commandment? Love God. That's not me. That's someone else is more important. Someone else comes first, preeminent. What's the second commandment? So like unto the first. Still, somebody else in front of me. You know what happens if I put me first? Problem. Verse 20. And here's the transition. Here's where things begin to change. Ye have not so learned Christ. But Bill, you're like, I'm not sure he's talking to the church there. Ye have not so learned Christ. This is not what I taught you. If this would be John, he'd be saying, my little children, the ones that I love, this is not what I've taught you. This is not what I taught you in chapter 1 when I taught you who you were. This is not what I taught you in chapter 2. Look at chapter 2, verse 10. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. This is the beginning, Ben. This is how Paul deals with us. Boom, therefore, boom, therefore, boom, therefore. He introduced it all the way back here in chapter 2, verse 10. You are supposed to have a worthy walk. You are supposed to have a walk that's ordained by Christ, created unto good works. This is who you are. But he knows we didn't get that. So in chapter 3, he goes into the prayer. Remember chapter 3, verse 17? That Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith. Did we forget this was a prayer he's praying? I'm praying for you that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, that ye being rooted and grounded in love. Remember all of this? We can go back to verse 15. Of whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might by his Spirit in the inner man. He's praying for all of these things. Then he ends that prayer and goes right into chapter 4, verse 1. Walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called. All the way back in chapter 2, he introduced this thought. In chapter 3, he prays that we get it. In chapter 4, he gives it to us again. Let me show you what this looks like. This worthy walk looks this way. First, it's in lowliness of mind. There's humility there. Then there's meekness. Then there's long suffering. Then there's forbearing love that just won't quit. So he goes through and he paints the picture for us again. Goes through all of this picture, which we've spent a month going through. Gets to this place in verse 17 of chapter 4 and says, let me give you the contrast. All those things we just got done talking about, and they tie all the way back to chapter 2, verse 10. Bill, let me tell you, those things are not going to happen unless you leave the vanity of your own mind. Unless things change up here. You're Christian sometimes, it's hard, and you go back and forth. No, you go back and forth because you won't let go of the way you used to think. And the way we used to think is, what do I want? What do I need? How am I going to get it? And on whose back do I need to step? Well, no, I'm a good guy. There's his way of thinking, where we're renewed in the spirit of our mind, and there's the flesh. But Jeremy, you don't get it. I'm a good guy. Well, maybe now I understand why the very first one is don't lie. Because the person we lie to, more than anyone else, is ourselves. So this is where we starts to give us these contrasts. Ye have not so learned in Christ, if so be that ye have heard of him and have been taught by him. All this stuff is blurry. I can't read a thing. It's a good thing I've read them 50 times. As the truth is in Jesus, verse 22, that you put off concerning the former conversation, the old man which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust. So remember we said these deceitful lust, deceitful, deceptive. This is where we confuse ourselves. We lie to ourselves. We deceive ourselves. And we've got to put off those old lies. As long as those old lies are there, the old way of thinking's there. And you know, Bill, we talked about some of those old lies. Remember some of those old lies like God's holding out on you? Like he didn't give you everything you need? Sometimes we picture him like mean up there. He's just watching us run around. They're still fixing things. So we went through some of those lies. We can see them all the way back in Genesis chapter 3. But we need to put those things off because those deceitful lusts, those urges, we'll chase them. Verse 23, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Put those things off. Now we have a vacuum that he wants to fill. It's the renewing of the word. It's that wonderful combination power of the word and the spirit. Strengthen ourselves in the inner man by the power of the spirit. It's renewing by the spirit of his word. And then that gets us to verse 24, and you put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. Now here's the first of 4 contrasts. So it says, verse 25, put away lying. Boom, here we go. No more lying. You know, we're exercising the mind. We're eating right. We're exercising the mind. We're strengthening ourselves in the inner man. Now, no more lying. Here's a great exercise for you. No more lying. Then no more lying to yourself. No more deceiving others. And here's where it just, I don't know why. I'm 50. I am 50 years old. I don't know where I've never seen this before. If I do, because I'm not that smart. But you know why we lie? Because it's all about self. I want to control it. I want to control the damage. I want to control the picture. I want to control the narrative. Why do I lie to myself? Because I want to be in control. I want to think more highly of myself than I ought. Put away lying. Get that out of the way. Walk now in truth. You know what? Lying just puts us in a world that's not reality. My truth. That's cartoon world. Rob, my truth does not exist. You know, we're going to get to the next one, be angry and sin not. You know why most of us get angry? Because our truth isn't working. Because my truth isn't happening. My truth isn't bringing about what I want. I'm not in control. And the failure of my truth gets me angry. So I try to intimidate, yell, scream, pout, whatever, to make my truth happen. So it starts with putting away that idea and quit lying and starting to live in the reality of truth. Truth. Strengthening inner man. Eating right, exercising right, growing. But there's this draw because it's all about me. Then he goes to verse 26. Wherefore putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Verse 26, be ye angry and sin not. This is still keeping that contrast going. Bill, don't lie, be truth. So now it says, angry, sin not. You know what, that kind of gives us this picture. You know, most of the time when we're angry, what it is? Here's the contrast. Most of the time our anger is sin. Here's the contrast. Don't sin. Be angry and don't sin. Don't get wrapped up in that place where it's all about you and you were upset and you were hurt and you were... No. We spent some time looking at this last week, and we're not going to go over all of it. In fact, mostly we just stopped and took a look at some barriers. The Bible gives us some barriers to kind of guide us and protect us in this area of anger. And here's a couple of them. Remember, Joseph, how do I know? I'm telling you, my anger was justified this time. My anger was godly anger this time. I'm going to tell you, godly anger is slow to anger. It's not instant. It's not the first in the bin. It doesn't explode. We're supposed to be slow to anger. We're supposed to, when we get this picture of anger, it's supposed to take a lot to get us there. Well, what's your godly anger over? And remember this: dishes, laundry. Well, my boss, he moved my schedule. Be careful, because today we got to talk about work. Remember, anger often produces anger, which makes that whole verse, Father, provoke not your children to wrath, makes it mean a whole lot more. Control in the area of anger shows strength. So is maturity as a Christian. Not the other way around. I can get so angry, look at my strength. And then, I don't know if we even looked at this, but James 1 verse 20, it lets us know this, that the wrath of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. So our anger, why, I'm here, shamefully I'll admit, I can get some things done when I'm angry. I can get some things moving. I can make some things happen. But they will not be the righteousness of God. It doesn't leave any loophole in James 1:20. So, verse 27, neither give place to the devil. Another one of those scary things. Anger, this selfish rage, it gives Satan a foothold in my life. Now, we didn't get very far, so here's the thing. So, man, what am I supposed to do? Well, in this same book, he's going to go to chapter 6. He's going to tell you to put on the whole armor of God. In Philippians, by the way, where he deals with this same idea, in Philippians he's going to tell you? He's going to tell you, whatsoever things are, think on these things. I think the picture really is, if we spent more time in here and here and surrendering to the spirit that's in here, we would have less problem with wrath. So, remember I said, anger's going to come. It's about what you do with it. Well, I'll give you this advice. What you should do with it: stop, pray, read, and listen. They'll protect us from a lot of dumb mistakes we've made in the past. So, we could go to Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Wants to help renew the mind. It protects us. So the third of these four practical contrasts we see today, in verse 28. Neither give place to the devil. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. So here's the third contrast. So not lie and deception, but truth. Not anger, trauma, drama, wrath, temper. But we're supposed to be under control. Meek, temperance, goodness. Okay. And then this third is not stealing, but sharing. Because the contrast is, I'm not going to steal, I'm going to share. Now how do I get what I share? I work with my hands. Not just taking from others, but laboring that I might have to give. The Bible has a lot to say about theft and about stealing. And we're going to look at a few things with what time's left. But before I do that, I want to say this. Theft is normal. Listen, it's easy. And as a father, I want to say this is a dangerous thing to do. All right, Ben, my kids are old, so your kids are young. Listen to me, please. As a father, this is a dangerous thing to do. It is a dangerous thing to say, I have no place for a thief in this house. I'm not justifying stealing. But I am telling you, stealing and theft, it's common. Why do you think it's listed here? I have no place for a liar in this house. Okay, I am not justifying lying and deception. It was first on the list. It's the thing that has to go before there's growth. But Bill, be careful, because that's common. Are you still teaching in the school? See, that shows I don't know anything. You know what those kids commonly do? They lie. You know what else they commonly do? They get angry. And you know what else they commonly do? They steal. Let me just remind you, Paul's writing to the good people here. I said, no. Can that be true? Well, you know, you start thinking about it, but then you start thinking about it. If self-pleasing me is preeminent to my life, it's really the only thing that matters, why wouldn't I steal? So yeah, I guess it does make sense. The world and the immature Christian who's still living alienated in the darkness of his own mind. But then, Miss Pat, as you begin to think, it's amazing. Things just pop back in my head. And I remember I listened to a sermon the beginning of last year sometime, so it's probably January, February. It was from a Bible school out on the West Coast. Maybe it might even be called West Coast. But I learned that every 2 years, colleges are supposed to send in a form. I think it was called the Doyle Report, but I didn't go back to look at it. I could have the name wrong. But every 2 years, they send in a report that is basically a crime report of what's happened on campus. Okay. So remember, they talked about this, and the number one thing that was on that crime report at this California school was theft. It was classified as burglary. So then this last week, I was listening to a sermon from BJU. And they were talking about the first of the year, and they're late turning in their report. And he was challenging the students to not steal, because the number one thing on the report was theft. Justin, if you think he's just talking so you can fill time, I'm telling you, theft is common. It's common, and it makes sense that it's common, because we refuse to let go, walking as other Gentiles walk in the vanity of our minds, and we want to live having our understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in us, blindly bumping into things, saying, why aren't things different? But also, and probably most of you know who this is, but I remember, Matt, you'll probably know who this is. I used to call him the basketball evangelist. And he speaks at a lot of teen events. He goes to a lot of the summer camps. He speaks at a lot of the summer camps, but his personal testimony, he talks about how in his late teens, early 20s, he had a huge problem with shoplifting. It even talks about how later in his 30s, he went back to all of those stores. And it caused him problems for years. When I was a teen, when I was a teen, Bill, I went out for ice cream for spaghetti ice. It's pretty cool. They actually take ice cream, they push it through a ricer, looks like spaghetti, and then they put their topping on it. In this case, they put like a strawberry thing or a cherry on it. Spaghetti ice. So I went out for ice cream after a sermon with the pastor's family. And a couple of people in the church, and Doug, they were saying, yeah, we had a special speaker, and I don't remember everything, because I didn't find out what happened. I didn't find out what I did that day until like 20 years later, because I happened to marry that pastor's daughter. And so we're there. Yeah, I was very disappointed. We had the special speaker, and it was such a low offering, and there was only so much money in there, and it was a piddly amount, something like that. And I was just at the table. No, it wasn't. You must have looked at a wrong count. I guarantee you there was at least $100 in the plate went in front of me. There was at least 5 20s. I put 2 in. I had to show off back then, you know. Wanted everybody to know I wanted my credit. Well, come to find out, 20 years later, that they went back and asked a few members from that side of the church to find out that the money actually was put in. And a deacon was taking the money before it went back to the room to be counted with somebody else. Do you hear what I said? A voted on, elected, looks good, wears the right thing, says the right word, deacon. I just want you to know it's common. Whether we're talking about shoplifting or taxes, or borrowing things and not returning them, or not paying debt off, there's lots of ways to steal. We know it's common. That's why we have passwords and banks and locks and security systems and cameras and contracts, and we know it's common. It's common for other people. He's not writing to other people. Well, I know what it says. Exodus 20 says, "Thou shalt not steal." It does. And there are a lot of other commandments that deal with theft. But I want to do this. I would like to turn to Exodus chapter 22. I just want you to see how serious this is. Actually, if you teach a government class, I don't know if anybody here teaches government. Exodus 22 is actually very good for a government class. You know who ordained government? It wasn't we the people. We just copied his plan. And we've gone far away from that. But Exodus chapter 22, I don't know, we'll probably look at the first 7, 8 verses. Verse 1, "If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for sheep." First thought. Here you go. Bill, mark this down so you can tell all those kids in that class, so that, by the time I'm 70, I don't live in a totally socialist country. God is for private property. No, this is what this whole passage is about. God believes in private property. If you have an ox, Brother Maddox, if you have a sheep, you know whose it is? It's yours. What's yours is not mine. I do not get to take it. But my need does not matter. You know whose it is? It's yours. He's given it to you. He's entrusted it to you. It's yours to deal with. It's yours to manage. You know why that matters? Because guess who's accountable for it? You. Yes. He is for private property. That changes everything we're doing these days. One of my favorite books I've ever read. It's like 74 pages. It's by a man named Frederick Bastide, and I would challenge you to have your sons read it. It's less than 100 pages. Small pages, too. It talks about government. It goes back and it evaluates the French Revolution. In it, one of the key thoughts is this idea. Remember this term, Matt. Legal plunder. You know what that is? That is passing a law so that I can take from you and give to someone else. You do realize we did not even have an income tax. Okay. Taking and taking and taking. The idea, the redistribution of wealth, it is wrong. It is theft. Now, it's legalized theft, hence legal plunder. But it is wrong, and it will kill any society. Stop and think about these things. Here you go, Doug. Ready? Why is lying in these top 4? Okay? Well, we are the body. If we're the body, and the eye lies to the foot and says, that is not hot. I know it looks like lava, and I know it's melting rock as it goes down there, but go ahead and stick your foot in there. That's not going to work very well, is it? If you have one member of the body deceiving other members of the body, you know what it does to the body? There's no more union inside that body. There's no trust. There's no paranoia. I mean, there is paranoia. It's a mess. Okay? You can't have unity in the body and lie. Why is anger in there? You are not going to come and talk to me about anything if my response is, yeah! That is not loving and approachable. Doug, if everything inside the body is me, 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 you know what you're going to end up having to scream for? Here, let me help you. Me, me, me. Now you have two opposing forces. It doesn't work very well. This does not become this. And so now you get to stealing. Well, why is theft in there? Why is it so important? Because let me start stealing. And it doesn't bring unity and camaraderie. Self. You have to get this one right, man. Let me help you out. In the end, the law is accomplished when we love. We can go 3 different verses. They're accumulation verses. They're really powerful verses, right, brother? In the end, all the law is accomplished. All the law and the prophets, by the way, are accomplished in this. So there's no loophole. When we love, I'm going to tell you, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love, so you get it right, it's selfishness. Yeah. All of these, you know what they're pushing us against? They're saying what she says clearly in Colossians 3, and if we had like 3 hours, we'd go there. But they're pushing us to die to self. That's what all. Why is lying on the list? Well, lying's about me. Why is anger on the list? Well, sin for anger is about me. Well, why do I steal? Because I want what you got. Jealousy and envy and division and They'll you back there saying, why did it take you 30 years to get that? I keep telling you, I'm not very smart. Verse 1, if a man shall steal an ox or a sheep, God says you're going to restore it. Verse 22, if a thief be found breaking up and be smitten that he shall die, there shall no blood be shed for him. Here. Ready? Justin, I love this verse. It's going to make me sound like a big, nasty, mean man. But you know what verse 2 really says? It says you have the right to defend your personal property. I am for personal property, and if anybody takes it, they're going to restore it. They're going to give restitution. And if, while trying to steal it, you stop them and they die, they die. They shouldn't be taking what's yours. And let me tell you, that is not the way American law is interpreted today. Well, I have a right to defend. You have a right to defend up to a point. If that person is not threatening your life, you're supposed to let him take it. There is a man in Orlando who was defending his store, who is now in jail, waiting murder charges. Because the man who walked into his store ignored him, pushed him out of the way, took his 24-pack of beer, walked out to his car, and began to drive off with him holding onto the door, was supposed to be allowed to take what is not his. Here, let me give you chapter 22, verse 2. If he's trying to steal your stuff and you stop him and he dies, he dies. Now, I know that sounds terrible, but I'm telling you, you have a responsibility. You're held accountable for what God's given you. That. If the man wants his 24-pack of beer, then pay for it. Amen. If he doesn't have money, then go to work with the labor of your own hands. mess all this stuff up with the feelings inside our own mind, planning out the way it's supposed to be. Verse 3. If the sun be risen upon him, there shall be bloodshed for him, for he should make full restitution. If he have nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. But Brother Maddox, so if he's trying to steal and he doesn't die, then what's his responsibility? Then he's got to pay you back. Well, he has nothing. And he pays you back with what he has, which is himself. So he's sold as an indentured servant. So Hampton, I want you to understand. See, we build penitentiaries. Penitentiary is a Quaker thought. It was a place to send people until they were penitent. God does not teach about penitentiaries. He teaches about restoration. You start having to restore what you took. Taking is not a good idea anymore. This sin keeps I as the center of life. And it has Christians walk in the vanity of their own mind. In ignorance, separated from God, having their understanding darkened. I'm not fighting you. Don't take a Snickers bar. Don't take a Snickers bar. I'm fighting that you get to walk as a mature Christian. We're running out of time, so let me just jump. Why is this whole theft thing so important? Well, one, what does it do to the body? Causes a mess in the body. But two, Brother Bill, I want you to imagine this, okay? I mean, this is me and my questions. Why did the church at Ephesus grow so fast, so strong, so powerful? Why did the church at Philippi? Why did the church at Colossae? Why is it so different than times today? Well, because people were the same. Study the word. It's the same. We have the same battles today they had then. Okay, so what's the difference? Well, I don't know the difference, but think about this. Picture the church at Ephesus. Picture a group of people who are now not lying, not deceiving, not running around as poor victims. I don't get what I want. Everybody's treating me. I deserve. Okay, but they're walking, speaking truth. Picture a group of people who, instead of being angry and venting and throwing up and throwing staplers at everybody, they're walking lovingly, teaching. A group that instead of stealing, now they're working and giving.
Amen.
What do you think that does to a society? You think they might stick out, Brother Maddox? You've been in here enough, you know. I just love this verse. I think this verse needs to be applied. If I be lifted up, I will draw all men to me. It makes us have to answer the question, what are we lifting up? Yeah. If we're not very attractive, what kind of God and Jesus are we lifting up? Because I think, in Colossians chapter 3, you know what he talks about? He talks about work. In Philippians, he talks about work. In Thessalonians chapter 3, he says, don't work, don't eat. He says, some of you have gotten lazy and you said, oh, he's coming back, why should I work? And my work's not very important. And well, let me give you some motivation to work. Hungry yet? Yes, but you should take care of everyone. Yeah, that's what he says. Those people who refuse to work have no association with them. Go back, read that chapter. Chapter 3, begin reading verse 6. Don't feel bad. He says, now you work so that you can give, but you give to those who are needy and can't. Not to those who are lazy or slothful. I'm just going to read you a couple verses quick. Not very many, because I got 1 minute. Proverbs is full of verses that deal with the slothful. Proverbs 26. The slothful man saith, there is a lion in the way. There's a lion in the streets. You know what the lazy always has? An excuse to be lazy. But Max, I can't go out there. The lion will get me. little kid, 4 years old, the lion. We always have an excuse where we can't. As the door turneth upon its hinges, so doth the slothful man upon his bed. I know the alarm went off, but just a little bit more sleep. Verse 15, these are in order, by the way, very rare to happen in Proverbs. Proverbs 26, verse 15. The slothful hideth his hand in his bosom, it grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. The lazy's missing opportunity all the time. You know what the opportunity he's missing here? He'd rather sleep than eat. He doesn't want to do any work. The sluggard is wise in his own conceit. He's wiser in his own conceit than 7 men. In the middle of all of this, they think like they're the smart guy. Look at Brother Hamilton, worked all of his life, and here's where he is. I'm going to have what Brother Hamilton has and not have to do any work. No, we don't have time. But I really did want to look at the theology of work. We have this picture like work is only from the curse, and it's a bad thing. No, work is the dignity of God. We were supposed to work before the fall. The fall, all it did is curse work. And just like he's redeeming man, we should be redeeming work. Doesn't matter if it goes for the work.